Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this evening's live stream. I am joined by Leo Lanahan, our chairman. Later on, we're going to have a little look at some statistics from the census in Scotland about family structure, religious belief, all sorts of things. So that's going to be very interesting. So we're going to be talking about that quite a bit in the second half. In the first half, I've got lots of issues to talk about. As usual, do chip in with comments. Just as I'm speaking, there's a massive spider crawling up the wall next to me, but I'll just ignore him. I don't think he's coming in my direction. Right, what else is going on with the family party? On Saturday, we're having a big strategy day where the leadership team, branch chairman, etc., we're getting together to chart out the course for the next year or two until the Scottish election. That's a very important day for us, and after then, we'll share some of our ideas. We'll invite feedback and discuss with other people. So that we'll have some new directions coming from that. So watch this space. So that's all that I've mentioned. I thought sometimes, there's a sort of bit of a pat on the back for councils, etc. I went to Dunfermline on Saturday. I've been there a couple of times recently. Many of you go to Dunfermline. Anyone live around that sort of area? That's very nice. I think the council's really hit the mark with what they've done there with the new gallery. Cafe in it, new museum in it, and the Abbot's house next to the Abbey, really beautifully appointed inside and out. Really looking good. A good tourist destination, I would say. So credit where it's due. I don't even know who runs the council there, but they've got things right in the city centre. I'd have to say in Scotland in generally where a council does some sort of special development in a city centre, it is often pretty good. It's some of the other aspects that are not so great. The other temptation for council, I think, is to put all the effort into something new that's quite exciting, have the photograph taken at it, but then 10 years later, 20 years later, that's looking a bit tired. It hasn't been maintained very well. People haven't taken an interest in it, and then they're wanting something else new because that's looking tatty. So keeping things up to date is very important as well. But Dunfermline, I thought, was looking good. Now, something I always forget to say on this live stream is please share it. If you're on X or Facebook in particular, on X, you can repost it or you can share it on Facebook. Can you share on YouTube? I don't know. Maybe, possibly not. But certainly on the others, do share it so other people who follow you or your friends or whatever can join in and see what's going on as well. Now, I learned something about YouTube today, actually, just randomly. I was watching a YouTube video. And the man speaking, he said, you have to be careful in the first 2 minutes of a YouTube video. He said, if you say things too controversial, then YouTube doesn't like that. And its algorithm will tend to show that video, present that video to less people. And that was news to me. So I've checked that up online. I asked my friend ChatGPT, and it said, yes, that's true. So that's something quite useful to know. So I'll put that into practice in the next few videos I make. So if you watch a video of me on YouTube and you think, wow, it seems to be waffling a bit in this first couple of minutes, then I'm just trying to tread water until the YouTube algorithm sort of loses interest in what I'm saying. So maybe that might be something important. Because the variation of the views on our videos on YouTube is absolutely wild. It can go from tens of thousands to a couple of hundred and then back again. It fluctuates absolutely wildly. And it doesn't seem to be entirely about the topic as well. I mean, who knows? So maybe that's something to give a try. Right. Good evening, Kirsty. Visiting uncle can't stay. All right. Well, never mind. Right. Have a nice time with uncle. Right. So let's get on to the issues of the day, shall we? Quite a few of them, as ever. Now, this was interesting in the Mail. Assisted dying bill said to be rushed into law at UK level. At Westminster. So Keir Starmer is a fan of assisted dying or assisted suicide, to call it by its proper name. I mean, assisted dying is a complete euphemism. So assisted suicide, he's a fan. And he's talked before about making time for it in the parliamentary schedule so a bill could be progressed. A backbench has put forward a bill. So this story is suggesting that this could go through quite quickly at Westminster. It wouldn't affect Scotland directly, but I think if it passed at if it passed at Westminster, I think the Scottish Parliament would be much more confident in going ahead with it. So I really think it would lower it would lower the guard of people in Scotland. And Scottish politicians who might have thought, well, this might be a bit unpopular, a bit risky. Maybe I'm putting my head above the parapet, but here, maybe I won't support it this time. I think they'd be more likely to say, oh yeah, may as well. They've done it in England and Wales, so what's the big deal? Let's go ahead. Now, I've seen this report in the Mail. I'm not absolutely certain how accurate this report is. The reports seem to be a bit contradictory and a bit vague, but it is a concern. I could say what happens at Westminster will have an influence to what happens at Holyrood. Now, even if it doesn't pass this time, the bill that's crawling through the Parliament, it's been going at a snail's pace for months and months and months. Even if that does actually get to the end of the road before the next election, even if it fails, I would imagine in the new Parliament that's elected, with probably a lot more Labour MSPs, will probably pass it before too long. So let's wait and see. Good evening. Think it's trying to make people as miserable as you can so they're locked for exit. Depopulation agenda. I think Keir Starmer has been under attack, hasn't he, for being extremely negative and giving a sort of hopeless message, which I think what he's trying to do is trying to say to people, well, it's trying to lower expectations at the point where you can still blame the previous government. But the longer you get into your term of government, the less effective it was all the last lot's fault becomes. So he really wants to get the groundwork in, really lay a strong foundation of things that are really bleak because of the last government. And then even if we manage to just make something slightly better, well, that'll be pretty good under the circumstances. And that's his sort of strategy. Now, you could say he's been realistic. And in a sense, I would maybe be veered towards the fact that he is being realistic because the country is in a mess. The finances are in a mess and there's no easy answers. So I would maybe go easy on him, being negative, because I think he is, to a large extent, just being honest about the state that we're in. John, never known me to be controversial. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a scandalous rumor that I say controversial things sometimes. Now, this is something I pick up on from time to time. This is with the Los Angeles Times. It's almost shameful to want to have children. Right. And what section of the newspaper is this from? Climate and Environment. And just illustrating this worldwide movement, part of the environmental philosophy, the environmental cause is so anti-child. Almost shameful to want to have children. So forget about like human nature, the continuity of the species, the joys of parenthood and family life, all of that, well, that's on the back seat. Almost shameful to want to have children. So, the reason I wanted to share that is that this is a very strong message in our society. And as the Scottish Family Party, part of what we want to do, part of what we want to use the political platform to do is to communicate completely the opposite message, that parenthood is something to be celebrated and honoured and encouraged. And that's not a message you really get from existing politicians. And that includes the Reform Party as well. They see it as well, sort of none of our business. People have as many kids as they like. Well, that's up to them. Well, a certain part of the political spectrum don't say that. They say, really, there are better things people could be doing, like going out earning money or whatever, than having children. We very much take the opposite line to that. Shameful to read the LA Times. Yeah, it is. I mean, they should be embarrassed. I mean, you're quite right. They should be utterly embarrassed to make such a comment. Now, in any other context, to attack someone because of their family choices, that would be seen as an absolute taboo, wouldn't it? That's judgmental. That's intolerant. Because that's effectively criticizing people who have children, isn't it? So if you just had a baby last week, that would make you think, oh, right, okay, well, they're really having a go at me, aren't they? So criticizing family forms is absolutely taboo. It's a terrible thing to do unless that family form is actually having children. So that's a worldwide movement. Right, okay, let's see what else we've got going on now. Murdo Fraser's Conservative leadership campaign. The whole Scottish Conservative leadership campaign seems to have gone a bit quiet recently. I don't know if I've been missing it or not much has been released. But Murdo Fraser, as I said last week, he came out saying he was pro-abortion because he said he wants abortion to continue to be available as it is now, the same sort of legal right to abortion. Now, I said about that, I don't care what his personal views are underneath that. As a politician, he would continue the killing of the unborn. So he's a pro-abortion politician. He also said he was against same-sex marriage. There was intrigues about it. You might have watched my video about it, so I'll be very brief about this. But he said he still doesn't agree with same-sex marriage because he's a Christian. So, okay, I agree with him. I'm a Christian too. I don't agree with same-sex marriage. So well done to him for being willing to say something that's a bit controversial. But the issue I have with what he says next is that he just says, oh, but that's just because this is not a direct quote, that this is my summary of it. His basic message is, I happen to believe that because I'm a Christian and us Christians have got some weird views, so please put up with us. Please tolerate us. You still should let us be in the party. It's the Kate Forbes sort of line. But that's totally different than the Scottish Family Party line. Our view is, we disagree with same-sex marriage as well. But there are reasons for that. It's not just some arbitrary religious belief that doesn't really have any consequence. We think it's a matter of policy. The same-sex marriage is a bad policy for a nation. It's harming the nation in various ways. And so that's why we oppose it. We promote the ideal of natural family life, mum, dad, and the kids. Mum and dad bringing up their own kids where that's possible. That's an ideal we want to promote. Same-sex marriage distracts from that ideal and encourages alternatives to that ideal where children are brought up deprived of the parenting of either their natural mother or father. So that's what we would put forward, but Murdo Fraser, not a bit of it. So, it's quite a stark contrast between the family party and even, Murdo Fraser, I would say, is known as one of the Christians in the main parties, but a very, very different message coming through. Right, the SNP's new blazer policy. Not blazer, sorry, school uniform policy. Did you see this? I mean, before I read it, even if I'd never read it, I would know what it was going to say. You know what it's going to say, don't you? It's from the SNP, education. Is it going to say, we really need to enforce uniform policies strictly so that children do actually wear the school uniform properly? Because that's positive, because it creates an ethos of obedience, basically, and uniformity and community. And that's a positive thing in a school. So we're really going to empower schools to insist on proper school uniform being worn. Do you think it said that? Absolutely not. That would be the total opposite of anything the SNP would say. That might be what the family party might say, but the SNP completely the opposite. So all this guidance is about watering it down. You can't have a blazer with a badge on because it's too expensive. You actually shouldn't have a blazer at all because they're too expensive. Now, some schools have blazers and they look smart and the pupils probably feel quite proud of them. And if you said to them, do you like wearing a blazer? They'd probably answer, yeah, I do actually. I think we feel a bit special here. Makes the school feel a bit special. But no, the SNP wants to sweep all of that aside. This also applies to independent schools effectively because they'll be inspected by the same criteria. So independent schools, virtually all of them, have a smart uniform with a blazer. Partly that's a part of their marketing strategy, and partly they think it's helpful for their ethos. But the Scottish government wants to do away with that. Again, it's the ethos thing. Also, hairstyle policies. They basically say your school can have a hairstyle policy if it really, really wants to, but the hairstyle policy must take into account the right of pupils to have their hair however they want it. I mean, so in other words, you can't have a hairstyle policy. And then it goes on to a really bizarre thing when it talks about afros and saying how the school needs to ensure there are positive portrayals of people with afros. I mean, it's comedic. But that's the Scottish government getting to grips with a non-problem in education. Actually, there's one more point I'll mention, actually. I'll tell you where there is a problem. I'm sure you've seen girls coming in and out of high schools in Scotland wearing the most ridiculously short skirts that could possibly exist, which is not suitable for wearing at school for obvious reasons. But this fashion has developed and there's probably peer pressure as well. So it's quite routine now for girls in Scottish high schools to wear, let's say, ridiculously short skirts. And some schools try to prevent that. But the Scottish government's uniform guidelines say that the school must not use terms such as modest or decent because they're sexist. I mean, how bizarre. I mean, teaching girls about dressing modestly and decently, I think that's actually really important. That's a very valuable lesson for them to learn. That's a matter of sharing wisdom. But the Scottish government says it's sexism. So the girls will dress, maybe indecently is an exaggeration, but inappropriately, at the very least, inappropriately. And that's going to tend to lead to problems of one sort or another. But the Scottish government is happy to have those problems ensue rather than use sexist terms like you need to dress modestly or decently. I'd be fascinated to some Muslim school when the inspectors go in and the head teacher says, well, we encourage the girls to dress modestly. Is the Education Scotland inspector going to say, you sexist, we're going to shut you down? Well, I don't know. Maybe let's watch this space. Let's see what happens. There's a couple of Muslim schools in Scotland. Let's see how that plays out. Now, I'll just give you another update on this. This is a developing story. Now, you'll remember John Naples Campbell, the transvestite head teacher who posts videos of himself dressed up as a woman, prancing around, singing songs on TikTok. He's the head teacher of a high school in Kinloch Burby in the far northwest of Scotland. And it came to our attention that the book is full, as you'd expect, the book is full of politically skewed books. So the library is full of politically skewed books. But that's probably the same in virtually every school in Scotland. But one book in particular has attracted controversy, and it's this one here, Queer: A Graphic History. And I've been through it in some detail, and it's just absolutely appalling, beyond the pale in what it commends to pupils as normal. The basic message is all those people who try and tell you some sorts of sex are right and some are wrong, some things are appropriate, some things are not appropriate, some forms of relationship are healthy, other forms are not. The message of the book is if anyone tries to tell you those sort of things, reject it. It's not true. The message of the book is basically there's no boundaries. You can do what you like with who you like, and it's all entirely up to you. That's what queer theory is all about. So go and do thou likewise. That's the message of the book. In particular, the book when it talks about sexuality, it says sexuality can apply to different genders, different ages, which I'm not too happy with, and also different species. So in other words, like animals, which is illegal. According to ChatGPT, it could well be against the law to communicate to children the message that, sorry to have to be talking about these things, but anyway, this is where we are in Scotland. Sex with animals is okay, according to this book. So to communicate that message to children, according to ChatGPT, could be committing a crime. So I'll put this forward with all the details of the book, sent it to the head teacher. He moved it to the area just for the 15 and over children. And I thought, no way, that's not good enough. This book needs to go in the bin, not in the section for 15-year-olds upwards. So I complained to Highlands Council and said, the head teacher says this book's going to stay in the library. Here's what's in the book. What do you say? And needless to say, they came back and said, well, add the quote there. The book is recommended by the Scottish Book Trust. Right, who cares? The Scottish Book Trust is a sort of hard left progressive campaigning organization masquerading as a literary charity funded by the taxpayer. And as it says, the book is in line with LGBTQ plus legislation. I mean, what legislation that is, I cannot imagine. I mean, there's no legislation that says it's okay to promote polyamory and all sorts of other perversions in a book in a school library. I mean, what law they think justifies that, I have no idea. I don't think they've got any idea either. I mean, either they're deliberately making it up, knowing that it's just total nonsense, or they're just in the mindset that obviously anything they do, there must be some law that backs it up. There must be the Equality Act or something that backs it up and says it's okay. And they also say that this content, I mean, just look at the three pictures there. Highland Council say that it's in line with the national curriculum. How about that then? Highland Council Education Department say those 3 pictures from a book that they sent those pictures in particular. They said that content is in line with the national curriculum. I mean, it's breathtaking, isn't it? Breathtaking that you can go to an organization with a group of people, they can sit down and look at this material and come to the conclusion, yeah, what's the problem? Looks fine to us. That's right. So I've now progressed the complaint to the next stage, to the Scottish Public Service Ombudsman. But I know what's going to happen. It's going to go to them, and they're going to get their big book of policies out. And they're going to say, where's the policy about promoting degeneracy, sexual immorality, etc., sexual animals to children? Where's the policy about that? Anyone? They'll look through all the policies, and there isn't one. There'll be hundreds of pages of policies on equality and diversity and tolerance and all that sort of thing. But when it comes to this, they will have no policy. So they will write back to me and say, we can't see a problem with this. It just makes me sick. It's like people have had their consciences surgically removed. So that's what I'm expecting. I'm also following up complaints in some other directions as well. But we'll watch this space with those. But it is. I just find it staggering. I mean, I'm lost for words. The fact that this could go to an education department of a council, and they say this is in line with the national curriculum. Yeah. Anyway, so that is a developing story. I spent a lot of time working on that, making my complaint as detailed and convincing as possible. So we'll see what happens. Right. This is the story from America, which I haven't followed closely, but it's an interesting effect. Apparently, in some town in America, rumors started that some immigrant community were eating their pets. I don't know if you saw that. And the suggestion was that Donald Trump was maybe sort of going along with it somehow, which I'm not sure he really was. But I haven't really followed the story closely. But what I'm interested in is the general situation where you've got isolated communities. And what tends to happen if you've got 2 communities living in close proximity, but tending to keep themselves to themselves, they're socially separate, maybe different language, even different religion or whatever, but they're not interacting with each other. It tends to happen that a rumor will circulate about what the other group are up to. That's just a standard thing that happens when you've got this situation. Now, you may say, if people are a bit more virtuous, that wouldn't happen. They would recognize that these are just rumors. It's not true. They'd reach out to the other people. To which I would say, okay, that's fine. That's very admirable. That's what people ought to do. But the fact of human nature is that's often not what people are going to do. And these sort of rumors and accusations are going to arise, often going both ways. It's the classic feud situation. But one side remembers what they did to us, and the other side does the same. So each side is building up a stock of grievances and becoming more and more embittered and hostile, while ignoring what their side how their side mistreated the other side. So I've talked about the case there where something's not true. But of course, sometimes the case might actually be true. I mean, there might actually be some bad behavior that's particularly happened within a certain community. And that's when things get really difficult in terms of maintaining community relations. Now, back with the Jews in England, back in the medieval times, all sorts of rumors circulated about that they were kidnapping children and killing them and all this sort of thing, a blood libel, as we refer to it now. I mean, as far as you know, basically all untrue, but these rumors arose and they drove the anti-Semitism at the time. I think the challenge we've got at the moment, particularly when it comes to Muslim communities, in a significant number of cases, there are actually things that have happened that you would understandably, well, not understand, would tend to arouse hostility towards that community, or at least some members of it, the grooming gangs, terrorist attacks, etc. So I think in general, where you've got isolated communities, these sort of rumors will tend to emerge, and it's quite difficult to manage those and to prevent tensions emerging. But when there are actually things happening, when it's not just rumors, things are actually happening, then that makes it far, far more difficult. Now, of course, no one should tar everyone in a group with the same brush. Of course they shouldn't. But again, human nature, it's going to tend to happen. It's going to tend to happen. And it makes a very difficult problem. On the whole immigration issue, I tend to try and chip in from time to time with a point like this, trying to be so balanced and reasonable, because I think that's a need for that in the debate. It's not a debate that needs stoking up. It's a debate that needs a bit of sensible comment coming into it. So, yeah. What have we got next? Right, that's Fergus Ewing. Fergus Ewing, the SNP MSP. I don't know who hangs on by the skin of his teeth more precariously, Fergus Ewing or John Mason. I mean, Fergus Ewing has been very, very critical of the SNP in a fairly gung-ho manner, I would say. I mean, John Mason says things the SNP don't like, but he says it in a very tactful, respectful way. He doesn't really criticize the SNP directly, but Fergus Ewing really does. He really takes swings at them. And in this case, he asked that the Scottish government stop instructing schools to teach about transgender identity. I won't go into the details of it. I covered it in a video. Perfectly reasonable question. The person responding on behalf of the government, Jenny Minto, government minister, basically said, we don't teach that in schools, which is just obviously not true, demonstrably not true. And you're left thinking again, does she not know what's taught in schools? Or is she deliberately avoiding answering the question, honestly? But yeah, quite frustrating. It's frustrating when you hear these things in the parliament, because often someone gets to ask a question, then the person answers, and that's it. That's it. The show moves on, and that's as far as it goes. I often think the ultimate productive exchange is where you have two people in conversation, but keeping their answers short. If you have two people in conversation, what particularly politicians tend to do is when they get the microphone, they'll just talk for so long that by the time they've finished, everyone's forgotten the question they were asked at the beginning. So the most fruitful sort of discussion is two people interacting with each other, but just answering each other's questions briefly and letting the logic of the argument be constructed. But in the Scottish Parliament, you don't really get anything like that. But it did seem like the SNP is a bit embarrassed about what it teaches in schools. But it's pretty unchallenged in the Scottish Parliament on that. Back to education here. So a quick drink. That's a good question from Brian. Is the Bible on the list of recommendations by the Scottish Book Trust? Absolutely, certainly not. They did recommend a book, though, that included a story of a boy putting his Bible in a bin. I'm not making that up. I made a video about this years ago now. But they published a book of short stories, and one of the stories was a boy who was brought up as a Christian, but he came out of the chrysalis, if you like, his step into adulthood and the perfect future involved, the key stage of it was putting his Bible in the bin and leaving all that behind. So that's the Scottish Book Trust for you. I've got it in for them actually. They're based just off the Royal Mile. I'm tempted to go and pay them a visit. I don't know what I'd do. Maybe make a video outside. Maybe project some things on the wall. If I went in to speak to someone, you'd never get to speak to anyone. But maybe projecting some of those images on the wall might be a good place to start. We shall see. It's not in a prominent position, so we'd have to take photographs. But as I'm saying this, I'm thinking, yes, I should go and do that. So that would be good. Without the family party, where would you get the truth on these matters? Well, thank you very much. That's a big part of what we try to do, is to look into these things for ourselves and to find out the truth. Libraries seem not to stock Christian books, but do stock atheist ones. Yeah, I would guess atheism was perceived as neutral. Certainly in school libraries, I would imagine things head in that direction. I think the stock of a school library is it's not a black and white issue normally. You know, it's a matter of balance, whatever, a bit of this, bit of that. But with this book, we've got an absolute clear-cut case where I think there's a decent case to say that a person choosing to give that book to a child or make that book available to a child is committing a crime by corrupting their morals or whatever. So I think that's a very serious matter indeed. But we'll see. We'll see what the other stages of my complaint lead to. Right, this story here. The poor old SQA, Scottish Qualifications Authority, they seem to mess up quite a bit, the whole process. But okay, so be it. But I also think as well, there is a significant core of opinion within the Scottish Qualifications Authority that actually wants to maintain a system of qualifications that are worth the paper they're written on. They want to maintain some degree of academic rigor, some degree of statistical credibility in the qualifications. There is that core in the Scottish Qualifications Authority, and they get slated for it. So the higher history exam, in particular, was a bit more difficult. They think the marking was a bit harder than usual this time. And so the proportion getting an A went down a little bit. Now, to which I would say, well, okay, fair enough. Maybe it is time for a qualification to get a little bit more difficult, because the general drift is for them to get easier, continually easier. And if they continually get easier, that's no controversy. If it just goes the other way a little bit one time, then all hell breaks loose and people are complaining to the SQA. And this process, this direction of travel needs to be stopped. Now, of course, when they make the history exam a little bit tougher, a little bit more demanding, that becomes a children's rights issue. So the people who complain about it say this is undermining the children's rights. I mean, what utter nonsense that is. The people who wrote the children's rights, if they knew that they were being quoted in order to complain about an exam getting a little bit tougher, I mean, they would be firstly amazed, and then I think they'd be outraged. They say this had nothing to do with anything we intended with children's rights. But I think it's an interesting insight into the culture of education in Scotland, and that this becomes a so-called children's rights issue. Now, the Greens, of course, and quite a bit of the SNP, and probably Labour as well, who knows about the Lib Dems, they would like to do away with exams completely. They'd like the teachers to make the grades up, because that would close the attainment gap. But let's move on. We're nearly at the point where we're going to bring on Leo. Yeah, you probably saw the story where a man was appointed head of a rape crisis centre, a man who thought he was a woman, pretended to be a woman, however, transgender woman, however you want to put it, was appointed to be the head of a rape crisis centre, and surprise, surprise, it didn't work out very well. Now, I'm really tired of these sort of issues coming up. I'm really bored of it, in a sense. I'm bored of, one day it's they put a man in charge of a rape crisis centre because he said he was a woman. The next day is they're going to put men into women's prisons. The next day is girls in school have got boys coming into their toilets. The next day is something else. You've got all these stories, and I'm really bored of it. I'm bored of it because it's an endless stream, and they keep getting reported and tackled and commented on as individual little skirmishes, but they're not. The only way out of this is to solve the problem completely. Repeal the 2004 Gender Recognition Act. No government agency, no law should operate on the assumption that there's such a thing as changing gender. That should just be removed from every aspect of government, healthcare, the law, and then that is that. Then, because at the moment, the official doctrine of the UK state is that man can become a woman can become a man. And that's just got to change. It's got to change. Now, as far as other politicians are concerned and journalists, I mean, they love their weekly issues that keep coming up, and they can write about the next issue and campaign about it or whatever, say what they think about it. But really, I say I'm bored of it, because the only solution is to, I say, pull it up by the roots and have done with transgender ideology once and for all. Right, I'm glad I'm past 2 minutes into the video saying that for the point of view of the YouTube algorithm. Right, the Daily Record. I guess this is the agony aunt. Dear Colleen, dating two women at one time is so stressful and chaotic. Okay, Scottish Family Party, don't do it then. But that's a classic example, isn't it? How newspapers, it's not us, online as well, the television as well, they just chip away at solid moral standards relating to relationships. They just chip away at them and undermine them. There's not much energy goes into promoting, marital faithfulness, etc. But a lot of energy goes into looking at alternatives, exploring alternatives. So, yeah, but that's the Daily Record. What would we expect from the Daily Record? Let's leave that for now. Right, Scottish Family Party Conference, 9th of November. It's just a Saturday afternoon in Glasgow. Get your tickets. I haven't put the link on today, have I? But the link, you'll find it on our social media. It'd be great to see you there. We've got a couple of speakers coming from outside the family party and some of our regulars as well. It will be really good. The drinks reception afterwards. So do join us if you possibly can for that. As I say, it's going to be a very good afternoon and early evening. Right, next week, something you can come along to. In front of the Scottish Parliament on Tuesday, between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m., there will be a demonstration, protest, whatever you want to call it. It's not organised by us. It's organised by SPUC, Society for the Protection of Unborn Children, because Tuesday the 24th is the day when the buffer zone laws go live, if you like. It's the day when they're activated. I don't quite know the right terminology. Anyway, so it's some significant day in that regard. So they're going to stage some sort of what would you call it, sketch, where people get arrested and for praying or whatever. So more people there, the merrier. We're not going to have any family party branding there. It's not a political event, but I think a lot of us are going to be there. So do come and join us. That'd be great. I don't know, I'll probably get a bite of lunch after somewhere. Maybe go over to the Holyrood Palace Cafe or somewhere. So do come along if you can. We would love to see you at that. Just on the wider buffer zone thing, it's a little bit sketchy about when the police are actually going to start arresting people. It's probably not going to be the 24th of September. But we don't even know if they're going to arrest people or on-the-spot fines or whatnot. I mean, no one knows how this is going to work. But it's possible before too long, it is going to swing into action. So we're going to see the police arresting, fining, or whatever, people who are standing in the street praying outside abortion clinics. So we will see how that develops in the weeks to come. Right, it's time to bring on Leo. Let's take that off.
Hello.
Good evening, Leo.
Good evening, Richard. Hello, everyone.
Well,
I want to talk to Richard about this map.
Yeah, Leo's got some facts and figures for us.
Yes.
Which are extremely interesting. Do you want the map on now, Leo?
Yeah, if you could show the map, because
take it away.
During the week I was sent this map, and what it shows is the Christian adherence in the Scottish population in 2022. So I asked where it came from. So it comes from the Baptist Union of Scotland, but then it comes in from a report that was published on their website of a bit of a drill down into the statistics from the Scottish Census in 2022. Mm-hmm. So it's brought to my attention because the person knew I was involved with the Scottish Family Party, and the suggestion is, and now many of our supporters on the live stream tonight and many others will perhaps have had the same thoughts, that if only the Scottish Family Party would concentrate on areas with Christian adherence, and I don't often use the word adherence, I've used it 3 times now. I think people used to say practicing Christians, but people identifying as Christian in the census, if we only concentrated on those areas, we'd perhaps have more chance of getting a local council elected, maybe building up then, once we get a grassroots movement going in a local area, building up to having an MSP in Holyrood. Now, and I just reflected to Richard then that I remembered the time we had 84 candidates in the local election, and where the party can, we do we do stand a candidate in local elections and try to attract support. So the question that I've got for Richard really this evening is it not the case that many have said to you, Richard, that there needs to be more concentration on where we can get votes and not spreading ourselves too thin? And so it's really a strategy question.
Yeah, it's interesting. Let's looking at the map. First of all, it's quite surprising. Western Isles.
Mm-hmm.
I think church attendance in the Western Isles, apparently, last I heard, is something like 40%.
Yeah,
which is like totally different league
mm-hmm.
than everywhere else. So if you look at Shetland, I mean, they're down at the very bottom there.
Yes.
I know they have their like pagan Viking boat burning, but
yes. But I also, Richard, sorry, I wanted to. So I began to sort of broaden out my sort of research. So I started looking at the Scottish Census and what it says now, because they're publishing more on Scotland's People website. They're putting more details on about what's happening in Scotland with the population, and so there's some of the, just for people to hear some of the. I'll read you some.
Just talk about the map a bit first.
Sorry,
could I just say a bit more about the map?
Certainly.
So look at the white areas. That's the lowest level of Christian identification. So that's like Aberdeen, Dundee, Fife, Edinburgh. I mean, we've known that. I mean, Edinburgh and Lothian, I think in 2021, I think was our worst region for votes. It's pretty tough. Looking at the election this year, some of our highest votes were in those like around Glasgow purple patches.
Yeah.
So the purple patch just to the right of Glasgow, would that be like East Kilbride? Are we in the right neck of the woods there? Looking at the other side as well, over on the west. Look at our membership. Our membership is probably skewed slightly to our Central Belt membership is skewed west.
Yeah,
I would say we've got more members and supporters around Glasgow. In terms of strategy, like targeting particular areas, I think that's important. But on the other hand, if it's, say, a general election, okay, you have candidates in certain areas, but if you've got one candidate, you can pay for them to have one leaflet delivered by Royal Mail. And beyond that, spending your money becomes a lot less effective. But the stage the family party's at is partly, obviously in the longer term, trying to get people elected, but it's also trying to attract members and activists as well. So even if we stand somewhere where we think the population is probably not going to be very receptive, we will still find in those areas activists.
Yes.
I mean, it's interesting looking at Aberdeen there. I used to have meetings. Well, we've had meetings in Aberdeen, and candidates, etc. But it's tended to be the people there have travelled in from outside Aberdeen. That became really apparent. It's from Peterhead and Elgin or whatever.
Interesting.
Surrounding areas.
Yeah.
So that sort of goes. But we're basing this on the assumption that people who are Christians are more likely to be in tune with the family party policies.
Well, that's a question I'm wanting to come to, because I think it's perhaps not. So just in general, looking at highlights from the census, there's an increase in people aged over 65 having no religion. That's from 2011 to 2022.
I found
there's
that
an increase in young people under 24 with no religion. All age groups saw a growth in people stating they have no religion. And males are more likely to have no religion than females. Number of people describing themselves as Muslim has increased. There's an increase in people with a minority ethnic background. And without migration, the population of Scotland would age even quicker. So people living alone has increased. There's a high number of people aged 55 and over living alone. So I'm throwing all these sort of facts out or statistics out because we probably need to think as a party about what does that mean about the sort of the way that we campaign, or the response that we hope to get from people. Because, for instance, if there's a fall in in a belief in marriage, if is there a rising number of households that are not married, where people are cohabiting, when the party is wanting to push marriage, but society as a whole is rejecting marriage. Where does the party support come from, Richard, if religion is declining? Just a final question. So, again, it's really for everyone watching the live stream, how can the party win support from these single person households? And when people are new to Scotland, because migration's increasing, they may not understand the Scottish political system or processes and not be difficult to engage. So I'm not trying to present a bleak picture, but I think when we think about strategy, we need to think from the point of view of what the census is telling us, and there may be inaccuracies in the census, but it leads us to wonder.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about this slide for a little bit.
Yeah.
So this is an age of Christian adherence in Scotland by denomination.
Yeah.
So we've just got Church of Scotland, other denominations, Roman Catholic. And I find this quite remarkable. Look at the Church of Scotland for a start. That's the blue one.
Yeah.
So the Church of Scotland, very much a more mature congregation, if you like, set of adherents, very much so. With the younger ages, there's actually more Catholics than Church of Scotland, up to about age 40, age 44, whatever.
Yeah.
There are more Catholics than Church of Scotland. So the Church of Scotland's overall numerical strength, assuming that this, so as time passes, basically each line will move to the right, won't it? So the Church of Scotland bulge, currently between like age 50 and 80, that's going to keep moving to the right. Yeah. If you look at what's coming on from the left, then it's sort of not very much.
Yeah.
So that's pretty bleak for the Church of Scotland. I find it quite bizarre with the Church of Scotland that it really goes down like 70 to 7. Well, yeah, I suppose that's basically people departing this earth.
People departing, yeah. But
I don't know why Church of Scotland people depart at a greater rate than. Yeah, but I suppose they're at a higher level, so it's going to be steeper, isn't it? Now, the other denominations, all other denominations, I'm amazed that that's so low in comparison. Now, I'll go into another slide about this. I find this quite remarkable. Right, Scotland's religious population is different from that of England and Wales, as it has a lower proportion of Christian adherents. Now, this is people who tick the box in the census saying they're Christian.
Yes, that's right.
We could debate what that means somewhere else, maybe not the place here. But so in England, in Scotland is 39%, England is 46%, Wales is 44%. So they're all below 50%. Scotland's census breaks up the Christian component into three, so that the 39% is made up of Church of Scotland 21%, of which a very small proportion actually attend, Roman Catholic 13%, and all other 5%. Or in relation to just the Christian communities, so just looking at Christians in Scotland, it's saying 53% Church of Scotland, 34% Catholic, 13% all the others, the Episcopal Church and all the others. Yeah. But it's saying in England it's 24% Church of England, 27% Catholic, 49% other. I find that hard to believe. Yes. I find it hard to believe that in Scotland, only 13% of Christians are in not Church of Scotland or not Catholic, whereas in England, almost half of them are in not Church of England, not Catholic. I find that really hard to believe. But this, I'm not saying it's wrong. But I don't feel that when you go to England, certainly there are 4 times as many evangelical, independent, Baptist, whatever churches compared to in Scotland. I just don't. I'm not aware of any.
Maybe there are. Maybe they are. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they are. Maybe that's just how it is. But just thinking more broadly, so what, if you think about all religions, all world religions have something to say about life, death and dying, the family and marriage, and all from a conservative or traditional perspective. So one would hope that in Scotland, with good campaigning, we might, as a party, Scottish Family Party, reach out to those churches, those groups, those charities, organizations that operate in these areas.
Probably primarily it's the individuals. To communicate. I think what tends to happen with immigrants is they arrive and they do have much more socially conservative views than average. So they would tend to be on our wavelength in terms of policies. But recent immigrants generally tend to be taken in more by the left-wing political message of we think you're special. We think everyone's picking on you. We want to give you special treatment because you're an immigrant. And that tends to win over recent immigrants. Obviously tends to, not all of them, but tends to. But then as time goes on, that pitch doesn't work with immigrants so much anymore. And they're more interested in, we're standing on our feet, we've got our own values, and we've got to assert them. The other challenge I think we can have with some immigrants is they'll arrive in the country and they're very much focused on sorting out their own life, and they're more interested in politics back home than they are in politics here.
That's true,
so I think that's something we really want to encourage people to do, to immigrants, to say, right, you're here, you've got something to bring here. We need your values. Okay, you're reinforcements for us. So please bring your values into Scottish politics. Don't just be, watching what's going on at home on YouTube politics. Get it. Look at what's going on here, and we think your values are really important. So there is potential in all those areas.
I mean, Richard, there might be the obvious point that charities and churches shy away from anything to do with party politics. But what I often struggle with is the fact that churches and charities find it difficult to say anything pro-life or vote for a pro-life party. What they tend to say is scrutinize the candidates. And if a candidate says anything remotely pro-life, then people can be encouraged to vote for that candidate who's the party that they represent is completely contrary to maybe the values, the principles that they hold as an elector. And that seems to happen an awful lot. And it seems to happen particularly in Scotland and particularly in the UK, where I think our church leaders and our leaders in charities are very, very reluctant to say anything that may be construed as party political. I think they have the right to campaign on charity issues that are core to the fundamentals of their charitable cause, but they tend to remain quiet. It's very disappointing.
I think the emphasis on asking candidates for their opinion, I think that's an import from the UK electoral system. So I think the assumption is in the UK, there's Labour and the Conservatives, one of them is going to win. For example, neither of them are pro-life, so the best you can do is just ask your candidate, and that's it. And in England, we could debate how that applies in England, but in Scotland, the situation is very different. But as you say, the individual views of the candidates make practically no difference whatsoever to government policy. The important thing with the vote is you vote for the candidate who then plays a part in forming the government, deciding which party is going to form the government. And that's what really counts.
I think. I mean, Richard, I know you're chairing the session, but I'm just picking up on a very interesting point from John McGrory. And it's an interesting one about whether or not a Christian church can be described as Christian if it promotes abortion.
Right.
And I think that goes to the heart of issues, though, Richard, as to whether or not, the life issue is, for many Christians, even evangelical Christians, whether whether it is an issue that they feel strongly enough about for it to affect their support for a political party.
Yeah. Now, the story with the Church of Scotland, I've heard that the Church of Scotland played a part in supporting the Abortion Act in 1967. I think their official policy now is relatively pro-life. I'm not sure it's easy to pin that down, but I understand that their official policy is sort of on the pro-life side at the moment. But within the Church of Scotland, there's a vast range of opinions on anything. Could I just go back to a comment? Sorry, just go back to a comment as well.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know, narrow focus on Christians, there's non-Christians who share some of our family values. Good point. That's absolutely the case. I mean, we will always be looking for votes wherever, looking for support from anyone who agrees with us. Our feeling at the moment is people who agree with us on some issues but are not Christians, quite often, not in all cases, but quite often, they're not pro-life, for example.
Yes.
So there'll be some people who are not Christians they'll be on board for sex education things, transgender things, freedom of speech, etc. But the pro-life thing, it tends to be Christians who would agree on that. So people who agree with us on the other things but are not pro-life,
I'm with you.
A lot of them now, they're going to go and vote reform.
Yes.
They're going to support reform. So that's a challenge for us. So in terms of building our base of activists and members and supporters for the future, for the time being, it feels like a significant amount of our focus should be on Christians in particular. That's the way we're going to be talking about this on Saturday in our strategy day. But we shall see. What were some of the other facts you had on there? Increase in people over 65 having no religion. But now I guess that's just this. But the proportion with no religion is just increasing in every age group as people get older, isn't it? So.
Well, I mean, I'm thinking in terms of you've got people. There's an aging population. There's an increasing number of people living alone. Increasing number of people with no religion. And
can we just stop at that one? So people living alone.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a very marked phenomenon in Britain, I think across the Western world. So how does that affect it? It's probably probably family breakdown. It's probably people not entering into relationships. It's probably not having children, etc. So people living alone. So how would our message appeal to them? I think the way we try and package our message as the family party, it's never been like we're the party that gives you a good deal if you're a parent or if you're thinking of having children. We're the party for you because we'll give you more money. Now that's the way a lot of the other parties tend to work. They'll appeal to a particular type of person, saying we'll give you a really good deal. Whereas we don't really make that sort of pitch. Our pitch is more, this is what's going to make a better society. And the way we think we're going to make a better society is putting more resources in this direction, which would happen to be towards young families, for example. So I think that's quite a big difference for us. So I would hope even someone who's not going to directly benefit from our policies. I mean, I wouldn't benefit from our policies, particularly. No. I don't think. I'm just thinking through them. I maybe would slightly. We've got one dependent child at home, just about. So I think that's an important part of our message, and hopefully, even people who are not going to directly benefit from them, will see the wisdom and see that it's necessary for the long-term future of the nation. That's our hope. In any case, Now, if you've got an electorate that's conditioned to political parties offering the pitch, we're going to give you more money one way or another. We're going to do the thing that's going to benefit you. If people are conditioned to think that's what politics is all about, then we've got an uphill struggle. Maybe we have, but we promote what we think is best for the country. Yes, yeah.
But I think it's useful it's useful looking at if I encourage people to look at the census, look at the analysis that's been done on the census, because I think it starts to give us a more realistic picture of the Scotland that we're campaigning in. And for those that have leafleted, when you have the experience of somebody marching out of the house and handing back the leaflet, as has happened to me many times, and saying they're not interested in these issues, it may be because they are a single person. It may be because their relationship has broken down. They didn't have children, and they feel isolated and feel that everyone's got an agenda and so on, which doesn't, which when one lives in a family where you've got people of different ages and older generations and younger generations together in an extended family that's together, you tend to have a broader perspective, I would hope. So
I think the evidence is that people who are living in a couple into older age, basically things tend to be better. I know there's exceptions, ifs and buts or whatever, obviously, but in general, that tends to be a positive thing. So the level of relationship breakdown does lead to a lot of problems, a lot of unhappy, loneliness, whatever, in later life. And the level of relationship breakdown, it's now not so easy to measure as it used to be. It used to be you'd look at the divorce rate.
Yes.
But the divorce rate is not the whole picture.
Indeed.
Not even half the picture now, because people don't get married.
Indeed, that's it.
People who don't get married, their relationships are far, far more unstable. And the ones who do get married are still generating a pretty decent divorce rate. So that's a really important issue to target. But in terms of the electorate, if someone, for example, is divorced, and let's say they're getting elderly and they're a bit lonely or whatever, they're feeling things haven't worked out brilliantly, then our message to them, are they likely to think, oh yes, that makes sense, that will help other people not end up in the situation I'm in, or are they more likely to think, well, that's no good for me, is it? I feel like they're criticizing me or whatever.
Yes.
So that's always what we're up against, and that's the sort of thing that leads to that short-term pandering politics that we've had for generations. So our mission, I suppose, is to present a vision for how to put the nation in a better direction, to enhance the overall well-being and flourishing of the population, and hope that people will see that as something worth supporting, rather than what's in it for me? Reply. The other parties generally, you see them campaigning, that's a very big part of their message. Is saying to people, particularly like the Labour Party and the SNP, it's right, this is what we'll give you. It just sounds like bribes sometimes that they're coming out with.
Great. Yes.
What else have we got in there? Well, over the last 50 years, decline in the rate of marriage. That's very, very much. Not just the rate of marriage decline, the age of marriage is getting higher as well.
Yes.
And the age of people having children is getting higher, which is another route to population decline. Having children later. It does result in a declining population. So that's another.
But I think, Richard, you said in your interview on Radio Scotland, people can go back on BBC Sounds or listen to it when you had your early morning interview. They were saying, well, why promote marriage? Surely no one's, people are not getting married anymore. It's declining. And I think you said something like, well, we're a principal party. It's what we believe in. We believe is good for the country. And, the tide may well turn on that when people see the effect of not marrying. I mean, I think a good question to put to young people is, that one of the most important decisions they are going to make is who are you going to marry? And what sort of person do you want to marry? Start thinking about that at an early age. We know that question's not asked in schools. And I know when my children have mentioned that they believe in marriage and they hope to be married, it's met with shock, even by the teacher in front of them. So, it is a challenge, but it's what we believe in, and so on.
But all the indications are that the youngest generation, like the 18 to 24, whatever, are becoming a bit more socially conservative.
Indeed,
in their views.
I would agree with you.
And I've heard people explain that part of the reason could be that they've experienced family breakdown, family dysfunction, and they've seen what's going on in the family, and they've thought, right, I really want to avoid some of these things for myself, if I possibly can.
Yes.
So they're more open to
Mm-hmm.
marriage commitment, etc. But
Yes.
I think it's a political party in general. If a part of your message is to change the culture, then if people are currently in the mindset that they don't get it, that their values, they've got the values that we think need to change, it's quite a difficult pitch as a political party to say, you know, those views you've got, we're going to come in and try and change them. I mean, that's a pretty tall order.
Yes.
For a political party. So the people we're going to appeal to is people who think, yes, that's what I think too, and I can see that will be a positive thing for our society. Now, again, for the family party, I always say, you know, we're not trying to design a set of policies to get 45% of the vote.
Yes.
We're trying to design a set of policies that reflect what we really believe and can get us, you know, 7 or 8% of the votes to get a couple of MSPs in. That's our mission.
Yes.
If the Scottish electoral system was just the same as at Westminster, then it would be a completely different game.
It would.
Would.
Yeah.
Right, John. Congratulations.
Yay.
Congratulations.
That's wonderful, isn't it?
Is that golden anniversary? Is that?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Right. If the PM should be more supportive of marriage, since it would tackle overcrowding in prisons. That's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. If more people got married, more couples would stay together, children would grow up in more stable homes, and there would be less crime.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a fact. But if you were to say that to probably the average voter, they'd be totally bemused by it. They'd think it was something like, okay, so you're going to put married couples together in one cell or something. Is that how you're going to tackle the overcrowding? But people just wouldn't get that. So, yeah. Okay, that was very interesting, Leo, to have a look through that. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Sorry, go on.
Go ahead. No.
I've got a couple more things to talk about briefly, just before we tie up for the evening. Right, so another assassination attempt on Trump. This is just a sort of personal take. If I think of America and I think of the person, the gun fanatic, a little bit mentally unstable, maybe some wacky views about things, and they end up taking a shot at people. Now, if you think about that person, stereotype, which party do they support? I would tend to think, you know, this is a sort of right-wing person, you know, the gun-obsessed person. You tend to think this would be a right-winger, and they'll be trying to assassinate, if anyone, Democrats. But the two we've had, it's been against Donald Trump, which I think, according to conventional wisdom, would seem to be against the run of play, I would say. But the other thing I'd say as well is I wouldn't try and base any conclusion on it, because we're talking about like a tiny sample of like freak cases that's resulted in that. But I think in America, I think it's getting to the stage where, it's a very serious concern, the safety of politicians. If you're in a nation where everyone and his dog's got a long-range rifle, and then, you know, what proportion of the population are unstable to a significant degree, how secure can you be from these sort of weapons? I think it's quite concerning. I mean, maybe this is just a flash in the pan and it will die down, and so then won't become routine. But at the moment, I think it could potentially be a very serious problem. I think if I was Donald Trump or Kamala Harris, I would be very worried about that. I would really wanting to know what can we do to minimize the chance of something terrible happening. And the last thing, I was just going to mention quickly Huw Edwards, child sexual exploitation material that he procured one way or another. So he's been given a sentence, but suspended. So he's not been sent to prison. I was interested to hear some of the mitigating factors, allegedly. That he had a bad father. He'd got low self-esteem because he didn't go to Oxford. And basically, he was gay and married to a woman. And those things were regarded as mitigating to some degree. I don't buy that. at all. What do you think of those, Leo? Would you?
I mean, we can't really know whether that was what was reported in the psychiatric report, you know, but, you know, the analysis I saw was that, you know, he'd received the images rather than created them himself. So there was all these factors that led to a lower sentence of not going to prison.
Yeah, he received them, but he procured them, didn't he?
Yes.
He asked for. They weren't that sent to him randomly, and he happened to open them.
Yes, I mean, the thought that is in many people's mind is that someone committing their first offence by calling, say, for a migrant hotel, which is terrible, calling for a tax on, say, a migrant hotel, that person was, with their first offence, sent to prison. People find it hard to understand how the law allows that sort of thing to take place. So, and how the judge's interpretation allows that to happen.
I would agree completely. Yeah, and then the people who are sent to prison for sending, I mean, outrageous and terrible incitement,
saying terrible things, inciting terrible things.
They were crimes. I'm happy there's a crime.
Yes,
but just something seems
out of
balance here.
Again, I don't think they were, you know, a risk to the public, and there's a feeling that, you know, this Huw Edwards was, you know, could be given as a suspended sentence because he doesn't pose an immediate risk to anyone. So why did you know, was a woman who was a carer for a disabled husband was sent into custody for 6 months? It's hard to countenance how that happens.
I mean, this idea that unresolved sexual interest in men, that's supposed to be some sort of excuse. I'm not sure of the reasoning that comes to the conclusion that therefore it's not so bad after all. Yes, that it was looking at child exploitation material. Yes, I don't follow that at all. Someone needs to explain the in-between steps. For that one, because I mean, if someone suggested that, I mean, someone could potentially be very offended. They said, well, okay, he's a paedophile, but you have to understand, I mean, he was gay, so that's obviously partly an excuse, isn't it?
Indeed.
Well, I think that would be quite
controversial.
Thing to say.
I even heard someone arguing for his potential return to broadcasting and to journalism at one point. Even a BBC stalwart I saw on the TV trying to suggest that might even be possible. Then the next day it was quickly knocked down. But, you know, someone was obviously trying to float a story that might lead to a rehabilitation. So,
The other thing I would say about this issue, which is obviously not a very popular thing to say, is I think there are people who find themselves it's outside their world. They find, as they're growing up, that their sexual attraction is towards children. They didn't want that. They don't want it, but they find that that's the way it is. Those people often can be really appalled by that, embarrassed by it, and really want to avoid ever acting on it.
Yes.
But find that quite difficult. So people in that situation, it's not their fault. And I think help for them, you know, whatever help's necessary, obviously needs to be available. The tricky thing then becomes, it's not their fault, so they shouldn't be embarrassed about it. We should be more tolerant and open and whatever. I think that's where you get into a tricky area, because that starts to be sounding like, you know, this is not, you know, maybe you shouldn't be so embarrassed about it or whatever. But obviously, you know, we want to maintain very, very strict moral boundaries around sexual activity with children. But on the other hand, I say there are people for whom it is a genuine struggle for them, and they're doing their best to avoid actually doing any harm. And I think we should have some sympathy for people in that situation. But if they do any harm, well,
there are sources of. I don't know if you've heard of a project called Stop It Now, and it's linked to the Lucy Faithfull Foundation. It's something I knew about in my previous work in social work. So there are avenues for people who can contact agencies confidentially and it's called Stop It Now. And so it's a way of getting early help and intervention in confidence, which is really important. It is there, but it's it's under resourced, and there's not enough of it out there. I think
the shocking thing is the percentage of men with sexual attraction to children. It runs at about like 1.5% or something, which is quite scary. So that's like comparable to the percentage who are gay.
Yes,
So that's a lot of people. It's a lot of people. So I think it's been an issue for well, forever, I think, and will continue to be so. But certainly those people who want to, in the name of queer theory or whatever, break down the barriers, escape these Victorian inhibitions and become more sex positive and tolerant in this area, well, we're not too keen on that. Let's put it that way.
Indeed, indeed.
Appalling. Right, well, thank you very much, Leo. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
viewers.
Richard.
Thanks for your comments. We've got a fair few in this week. So, Leo, I will see you on Saturday on our strategy day.
Great.
And maybe next week on the live stream, I'll share a little bit about what we discussed, and you can give a bit of feedback on those.
Thank you, Richard.
Right. Bye, Leo. Bye, everyone. I'll see you next week.